I'm just going to ask, what's mental health?
Okay. I wonder what.
You can first use this to suggest.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wish we had time, and I ask people here what they think about when they hear the word mental health. Many times when we think about mental health, is it clear?
That's clear. Okay.
When we think about mental health, there are many images that go through our mind, but I want to say there is a difference between mental health and mental illnesses, or mental disorders as they are called. But mental health, basically we are talking about mental health well-being of a person. And we all strive for that mental well-being, where your thinking process and your behavior and your thoughts are well, simply put.
Jazz, you said you've walked this journey before. It's not, that journey is not called psychopath because path, but what? Anyway, so you've walked this journey before, and you, like, when did you realize, like, okay, things are not fine? Like, things are not fine. Yeah.
I got diagnosed when I was 12, 13 with depression because of a bunch of things that were happening, and I was taken to a psychiatrist and diagnosed. And then when I was 14, I started having panic attacks in school, so anxiety. And when I was 16, I developed bulimia. Then I developed anorexia when I was 18. And I found out this year that I have body dysmorphia. So it's been, I told you guys, I'm going to keep making dark humor jokes. I'm really trying not to. I don't even know if you can tell, like, I'm trying, because I'm smiling so much because I'm trying not to make jokes about it. But it's been like a continuous, like, I don't think it's something that ever stops. Like, people always ask me, like, when did it stop? I'm like, it never stopped. It's still going on, yeah. So I don't know the more professional aspects of it. I just know my experiences that have been with it. Yeah.
I think that's why we asked you here, because Julia may bring the professional aspects. You have lived it, so
yeah.
you and maybe someone else in the audience may have is going through that or has or probably will. Julia, what are the telltale signs of people around us or even us? Maybe we are depressed, or we don't know, we think we're just irritable, or maybe we have other conditions. But what are the telltale signs of maybe things are not fine?
I think, like she has mentioned, first it is important to acknowledge that there are different types of mental illnesses. And the symptoms will be different depending on the symptom, depending on the type of illness that one is going through. But generally speaking, like for example, when you think about depression, sometimes we say that anything that interferes with your day-to-day activities, for example, all of a sudden for 2 weeks you realize that the things you used to enjoy, you no longer enjoy them anymore. You sleep a lot, or you are eating a lot, or you are fatigued, or you are crying a lot. That may be symptoms that, things are not going well. But besides that, like I said, there are different types of depression. It could also be bipolar, where some days you are sometimes you are very high in terms of your mood. You find yourself even being extravagant and all that kind of thing. Then other times you find yourself being very, very, very low. So that is depression. But then sometimes when it becomes more intense, you start having things like hallucinations and all that kind of thing. But when you realize that your thoughts, your behavior is interfering with your day-to-day activities for a long time, then it's high time to start asking yourself what is going on with someone. And let me say, especially children, sometimes we ignore that aspect of children. Sometimes their behavior changes at school, and we start saying that this child has become very disobedient, but there could be issues that are disturbing that child. Yeah.
We're in a society where there's a stigma around mental illness. Either you're told the Madari jokes, or it's not an African thing. Like, Africans don't have that problem. We have many other problems, but mental health sounds very first world. It sounds very like we have to first fight against hunger, then we get to depression, in the sense of like it's almost elitist to even have a psychiatrist. What would you tell guys about the stigma? Should we all go see psychiatrists once in a while, like a health checkup, or just tell us where, like, to kind of remove the stigma around this?
Okay. I think one of the things to say about Africa is that mainly our mental health issues mainly come from what we call psychosocial issues, which are very many in Africa. Talk of a child who may be in a very abusive family setup, or a wife or a husband for that matter, who may be in a very abusive relationship, or a young lady who was raped in her childhood and she has never talked about it. So there are all these issues that are with us here in Africa. When you think about suicide today, it's very high. And some of these suicide issues are related to mental health, most of them. So it's unfortunate that we are still hiding the issues of mental illness, and mainly it's because of our culture. It's because of the way we talk about mental health. Mental health or mental illnesses is equated to that mad person in the street, who has removed their clothes and all that kind of thing. But when you think about it, mental health is here with us. Statistics are telling us that 25% of our population is affected by mental health issues or mental illnesses. So it's you and I to start fighting the stigma and not to label mental health. Because when she talks about her mental health, it's just like any other disease. It's like cancer. And it has to start with us, removing the stigma that is coming from our cultural beliefs, where we consider people suffering from mental health as outcasts. But it's time we start embracing them. I think it's you who talked about embracing them and saying you are good and you are sick like any other person who may be suffering from cancer or diabetes or any other disease. Let's walk this journey together.
Jazz, I'm someone who's walked this journey before. What's the one thing you wish people understood about you at that time? Like I'm sure there were a lot of episodes where you felt people just didn't quite get what was happening. But what was like one of the main things that, like, I just wish you would understand that. Yeah.
I think the thing of, just try and make yourself happy. That thing of, if you do this, like I get told a lot, if you work out, you like change this, you just withdraw yourself. It's like everyone becomes an expert. And in that moment, you're not talking to someone because you want advice. You just want them to listen. Even when now someone's having a suicidal tendency, as much as you're scared in that moment, they don't want you to tell them, no, that's stupid, don't do that, what's going to happen? They just want you to listen and just be there. That's it. Like, even tell them, I don't know what I need to do for you, but please let me know what I need to. But don't assume that this and this and this is what they need.
Julia, I don't know, I feel like I'm too casual when I say that. But so, like, since the awareness about it is growing,
yeah.
But now the thing is, we don't know what to do to the people around us who could have that condition, or to ourselves. So if my friend, my family is having that problem, like what did you advise me to do?
Okay. I think she's partly answered that one is not to become an expert and start diagonizing them and giving them advice. One is to listen to them, is to understand where they are coming from. When they tell you they are feeling low, instead of telling you snap out of it, is to understand where is it coming from, what has triggered it. So those are some of the small things that we can start doing to support those who are suffering from any kind of mental illness. Of course, there is also the professional way to do it, encouraging people to go for counseling. And counseling is available in our country today, as opposed to many years ago. But just telling them just go. Because another thing is that there's a lot of stigma when people start looking for mental health services. You are going to Mathare? Oh, how? Yet, like I said, it's telling people, go and seek the services that are there. Go for counseling, go for support group, go for whatever it is so that you get the help. When somebody tells you that they have this headache which has gone on for so long, you don't keep asking them, how come you have had this headache for this long? What's wrong with you? What do you do with them? You take them to the hospital, isn't it? You look for a way to support them. And that is the same case, that they are psychiatrists, they are psychologists. You may not even afford those services, but they are free services like Kenyatta Hospital, like Mathare Hospital. Sometimes we have support groups where we can bring, like university students, where we can bring them together. If it's people who are going through depression, and we give them group counseling, because it becomes a little bit cheaper.
As we come to the conclusion, before I ask people to give questions, you're part of an organization called ELIM Trust, where you deal with issues like this. How do people, you can tell us a bit about ELIM Trust, and also how people can reach out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. ELIM Trust, it's an organization where we offer counseling, what I'm talking about, where we offer individual counseling, but also support counseling. We also do a lot of community work, because we realize, like we said earlier, beside stigma, there's a lot of ignorance at the community level. So one of the things we do at the community, Rift Valley and other places, is that we equip people like religious leaders, pastors, with skills to do with mental health, so that they can use the community structures to support children, women, and all other people at that level. Another thing we do is that I'm a lecturer at Desta University, but again we realize that there's a lot of mental health issues facing young people, even in colleges and universities, and we have an initiative called Vunja Kimya, where again we reach out to university students, giving them counseling, support group, and even asking professionals like you, people who are seated here, to come and mentor their young people, youth. So that's some of the things we do. And so yeah, we offer counseling and community work.
I'm hoping, like, after the show, you'll stay around in case someone needs to.
Yes.
Yeah. To you guys, any question, any remark, just raise your hand. I'll get to you where you are. One. Another one. Okay. Let me get that one in the meantime.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I was just wondering if addiction falls within this general spectrum of mental health illnesses, and how, I don't know how to put it, but yeah, generally addiction.
Okay.
You could answer that.
Okay. Yes, it is. We say that alcoholism is a disease, especially now when it becomes an addiction, because you realize that, again, it's not something that can snap out of easily. In fact, we call it substance abuse disorder. So yes, it's a disease that, again, would seek some kind of intervention.
Any other question? Good.
Hi there. I was wondering, now, what if you're with someone, okay, you have maybe a relative who is depressed, who is entering the stages of depression where they're not opening up, and they're keeping it, like, they're acting very differently, and like they're getting annoying, as in, so you don't even know what to do, as in you can't even approach them because they're approachable. Like, how can you help such a person? Because you can't tell them to share, because at this time they just want to stay alone and keep quiet to themselves.
Okay. We are just consulting. If you have a relative who is going through this, and you can see clearly the symptoms are there, and they're not willing to seek for services, you are saying that they will not want to go out to look for help. That's what you're saying.
they don't even want to talk to you, as in they have like their own cocoon, so then they just want to be by themselves.
Okay. And I will ask her to correct me from her experience, but when it depends on the approach that you use to reach out to that person. Because if you go out to them with this kind of attitude that there's something wrong with you, then they may be very defensive. Because already they feel judged. I think most of the poems we were talking about here is that people with mental health feel very judged. And sometimes we judge them also because we don't understand them. But when we go with an attitude of sincerely wanting to help and understand what is going on in their lives, then often they open up. Because it's an issue of listening to them. And the best support we can offer them is to listen to them, like she said, without giving advice. Listening to where they are coming from, listening to their story, and working with them. And in the process, you can introduce something of, do you think if I talk to somebody else who can talk to you, you suggest a few things to them about getting help from a third party. But first, it depends on how you enter into their world. If you're judgmental, they'll cut you off. I don't know if you have something to add.
Yeah, no, that covers it. That's why I think it's easier to talk to a therapist, because you already know that they have the understanding, like they're well versed with what's going on, as opposed to someone who has never encountered it. Because you find that there are some people who've never had any contact with any sort of mental illnesses or people with mental illnesses, so they don't know how to approach it. So maybe you could try and approach it differently, or even suggest someone that you know, because I found that helps. I've often been asked to approach other people and just talk to them, and it takes a while. It doesn't take like a day or a week. It takes months and years to get to a point where they're comfortable, because you need to understand that that's also a trauma. Like even the poets that you see up here, don't think like, oh, they just, found out they were diagnosed and then came here and then just wrote like it takes a while to get to a point with yourself as well, to be like, okay, I am going through something and I do need to talk about it and it is affecting me. Yeah.
Any other question? Brilliant.
Hi, my name is Mkanzi, and I wanted to, I don't know if it's asking or commenting, but let's see how it comes out. So sometimes, or most of the time, people who, let me say, if you believe in God and you go to church and read the Bible, sometimes, when people have mental issues, or you're struggling with mental health illnesses, and you go to, let me say, sometimes people do turn to, they're preachers, and they're like, hey, pastor, this is how I'm feeling. And sometimes I feel like the church does not adequately address these issues, because then they'll just tell you, some of them will tell you, you know what, God is all the answers. And they're like, you read the Bible, that is where your healing comes from. And sometimes I feel like that is not enough. Even when you look at, some of them, it's like very overwhelming, just like the overwhelming cases of domestic violence and abuse. And sometimes you see somebody comes to church and they're like, oh, my husband is beating me, or my wife is doing this to me. And some preachers will be like, you know what, a marriage is an institution that's, sanctified or whatever by God, so you have to go back and pray. And then sometimes you find that somebody one day just snaps and they end up killing the other person, or things happen. But then the church, I feel like sometimes the church fuels these things, that they do not address these things that they're supposed to. They do not provide these services. Like if a member comes to me, like a member of a church comes to me and they're like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, it's okay to pray about it, but then also address the issues. Tell them you can go to, if you cannot give them that help that they're, if I cannot focus on even just like taking care of myself, just waking up, how am I going to get into a whole Bible and start, decoding all those things? So I think it's also important to just just like redirect them to the right sources. If you cannot do it as a preacher, then tell them, refer them to other people. I don't know. Do you think the church does enough in, just like raising, awareness in, mental health issues, or, and how can that be done properly?
Okay. I think the point you have said is quite valid. And earlier when I was talking about ELIM Trust, I said one of the things we are doing is to train pastors mainly to address issues of mental health, because they serve as the counselors at the community level where we come from. But like you have said, many times when we go to them, they don't know how to deal with these issues. So one of the things we are doing is to train them on the whole issues of mental health, how to address it. And we are training them, we are giving them basic counseling skills so that they are able to help their congregants when they go to them. So that's one of the things we are doing as ELIM Trust. Another group we are training is community health workers or volunteers. Again, they serve as that link between hospitals and the community. And so again, we are offering them that training so that they have this basic training, and also to tell them the importance of referring patients to hospitals for counseling and any other kind of intervention. Yeah.
My question is more about, how does one find a therapist then? I mean, we're living in a society where these things are kind of hidden. I think in some other countries, you just go on the website and you type in therapy, or they have these apps now. But if someone is literally interested in finding one, it's not like a thing where you just go to a doctor, and you can see a doctor if you don't like them because they're just kind of healing a physical thing. But I think for therapists, like, you want to vibe with the person. So if someone is interested in finding one, how do they do that? Or
They are there, like you said, if you search, like for example, one of the things we are trying to do and I have my colleague here, Nico, she can talk about it. One of the things we are trying to do, to put, is a list of different therapies. But when you go to the internet, like I'm a counseling psychologist, and I have had people get my name from the internet, referrals, hospitals. If you go like Nairobi Hospital and you say you are looking for a therapist or a counseling psychologist or a clinical psychologist, you be referred. So they are there. We are quite a number of us nowadays, as opposed to some years ago when there were very few trained psychologists. Today we are quite a number. So referral system is there. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so what are the things that you should look for if that is the therapist that you want to be?
Sorry?
What are this time?
You can come here.
Okay. Guys, after she does, I can only allow 2 more. So, and I go one over there and one over there. Yeah? Okay.
Okay, so thank you for that. And then a follow-up. So when you go and you look someone up, mm-hmm. What are the kind of things you should be looking for if this is someone that you want to talk to long-term? Because I think therapy is not like malaria where you go and it doesn't matter what doctor gives you it's like process, and you have to it's almost like dating almost. Mm-hmm. So when you're in the room and you're searching for a therapist, what are some of the things you as a person should also be looking for, checking the checkpoints to see if this someone will be good for you? I mean, you can go with the vibe, but
Okay, I think she had let her tell us.
I always hate doing this, but I always look for a woman. I don't like talking to men. I don't like talking to male therapists, because I had a male therapist at first, and it was so terrible. I found that I don't know what it was. I just gelled more with women. So for me, it didn't even matter who it was, so long as she was a woman who was in the field, so who was a therapist or studying therapy even, because when I was in high school, she wasn't a therapist, she was getting her degree, so she was more of a counselor. But I found that was easier because we were able to connect more, and I like to ask them questions in the first session. So and correct me if I'm wrong, what they do is they don't talk. they'll ask you one question. So it'll be the dumbest question. It'll be, so it looks like there's clouds outside. That's it. And then they won't talk for like the next hour because as humans, we like to talk a lot, you know. So when someone asks you how you are, they're not asking you to ask you. They're waiting for you to ask them back, like, oh, so how are you? And then you want to go off. And that's the same thing I've noticed in therapy. So what I do is I throw it back. So it's like, oh yeah, how was your day? Yeah, it was this. How was yours? And if they start, it's like, okay, you have to make them comfortable. So it gets to a point you have to make them forget that that's a therapy session. Like you both are just sitting there. And I find that if it's easier to do that, then that's the therapist I'd want to be with, because I want to be able to have a conversation, not just you sit there and write notes down. I don't know, has anyone watched Mad Men? Yeah, so there's like that one episode where Betty is like sitting and she's talking and the therapist is just, and she gets so frustrated. She's like, I want you to talk. I don't want to be talking to just myself. And she goes into this whole rant, and then 5 minutes later, the therapist is like, You know, it gets frustrating. So I think that's what I would say. Look for someone that you can see more of as a friend, and you end up, it's easy to talk to them. Like you said, dating. I think you know who you're compatible with when you're dating. If you don't feel a spark with someone, even with a friendship, you just don't feel a spark. And that's the same thing with a therapist. If you feel like I vibe really well with you, it's much easier. And I feel like that's what you should go off. If you don't feel a connection with your therapist from the first meeting, just thank you, goodbye. Yeah.
And maybe just to add to what she has said, there is the whole thing of the area of specialization. For example, there are counselors who specialize in marriage and family. Somebody had talked about addiction. Like, for example, I don't handle addiction, but somebody else is very good in that field. So again, find out the field. Is it children? There are psychologists who are very good with, or they are trained in child psychology. So the area of specialization, again, matters. What are you looking for? If it's to do with relationships, again, who is best placed to offer that kind of service? So do your research. Then, of course, again, like she has said, whom you connect with. Because like you said, this may be, not always, but may be a long-term relationship. And one of the things you do when you go for psychology, a psychologist will ask you, do you have any questions to ask me? And whatever question you have, they should be able to answer. If they are hesitant in any way, then you start wondering why. So there is that freedom.
Okay. Hi. So I just wanted to amend something both of you had said earlier about negative reactions you get when you're dealing with mental health. You guys had talked about how most of the time you shut people off after that happens and whatever. But personally, there's a phase I went through and a lot of people go through where instead of shutting people out, you believe what they say and you want to change yourself to make them comfortable instead of curing your mental illness or whatever it is. So like you'll be depressed and someone will be like, oh, you just need to improve your mood. So you'll be, like, I'll talk about myself. Like I'd go to school, I'd force myself to be fake happy around people, be loud, messy the whole day. When I get home, I literally can't make it past the front door. I'm on the floor crying because it was too much for me. But because I don't want people to know how much I'm hurting, don't want people to know that I'm depressed, anxious, whatever, I'm faking it. When I was dealing with my first eating disorder, I remembered I didn't eat at home. At home, I had easier ways of faking it. But in school, I knew people would be like, we didn't see you eat today or whatever, or I would find ways to like, oh, I ate break, but I'm not going to eat lunch or something like that. So there's coping mechanisms you have to make other people comfortable with you that make your mental illness a lot worse. And honestly, getting rid of people is so much healthier than keeping them around for the sake of making everyone comfortable, including your family, your mom, your dad, your uncle, whatever. Yeah, that's just it.
Before you make any remark, I'm going to go to the last person so that you do final remarks, okay? Yeah, that's good.
Hello.
Hi.
Mine was not really a question. I was just adding on to one of the questions that were given in terms of how do you get a therapist or how do you go about it. So you had mentioned going online, and I don't know if this is going to help you, but I just knew a few places. Like one, the Amani that's at Magatiwe. There's Nairobi Women's Hospital. CITAM offers free counseling. If I remember others, I'll just, if you'd need others, just let me know so that we have a communication. Oh yeah, and then there's FIDA Kenya as well. Okay, thanks.
As we come to the conclusion of this session, which is actually our last session tonight, I'd like to give just the both of you 2 minutes for your final remarks. Yeah. If there's something you feel like we need to know, yeah.
Okay. My final remark, I would like to, I hope I won't take more than 2 minutes, but I want to give a live example of a wound I have on here, on my hand. And it happened when I was a small child. We were fighting with my sister, whom I follow, over maize. Where I grew up, we did not have sugarcane. Okay? We had maize comb where you'd cut and chew it as sugarcane. And so this one particular day, we were fighting over this sugarcane in quotes. And in the process, she cut me. And what we did, we knew after my mom coming back, she was going to fight both of us, to beat both of us. And so what we decided to do, can you hear me? Yes. I feel like this is a bother to me.
Do you want me to hold this for you?
No. I want to stand up. I'm a teacher.
Let me help you with this,
Okay. Okay. And so what happened so I was saying when my mom came back, we decided we were not going to tell her. We were going to hide it. And I tried to hide it. But as you can see, I'm sure you can see, but I have a scar up to today. So, as you can imagine, I could not hide this thing from my mom. Somehow, she discovered that I had this deep cut. And so, what did she do? I grew up in the rural areas. Possibly by now you can tell. So, what my mom did was to take salty water and start washing the cut. And I never went to the hospital. And the scar is still there, very big scar. But every day, my mom would open it, take salty water, and wash it. And it was a very, very painful process. Until today, what is happening is that the scar is there, but I'm not feeling the pain. My last word is about psychological wounds. That sometimes we try to cover them. We want to pretend that, I don't have this wound. But what happens? What could have happened if I tried to hide this wound from my mom? And you can imagine it was very big. It was going to affect my whole arm. But what she did was to open it. When we have psychological wounds, however small they are, let's not try to cover them. Let's open them up. And it's a very, very, very painful sometimes to open a psychological wound. Let's open it up. Let's wash it with salt. The painful process of washing it with salt to a point where it is healed, and what is left is what? Is a scar, like I have today. So my challenge to you, if you have any kind of psychological wound that is disturbing you or somebody else, ask them to ask for help. And one way to ask for that help is to go maybe for counseling. And that process, or whatever the process it may be, it may not be easy. But finally, the scar will be closed. If we don't, we continue suppressing these things. And what is eating our society today is that we have suppressed a lot of issues. We have children, small children have suppressed a lot of issues. And so what happens with time? It's like a Coca-Cola, it just bursts. suicide. All these kind of things are going in our society. Most of them are related to these psychosocial issues we have hidden for so long and we are not willing to address them. So, remember the scar. What you need to see is a scar. The scar is not painful. I remember about the story, but I am healed. That is the same we are talking about psychological illnesses for our own mental well-being. Thank you.
Jazz?
What do I even say after that?
I don't know.
Just to quickly add to Rachel's, Chiramo also has mental health institution, so a rehab that you can enter if you feel like it's gotten that bad, or counseling sessions, and they're pretty flexible and pretty affordable. But if you're like me and you use your money elsewhere because, see, I told you document anyway. I was gonna be like, and you're okay with the prospect of death? No, don't be okay with the prospect of death. That's just me. No, but seriously, if you feel like you do need someone to talk to, I always say that I am here and willing to talk to people or just listen. So if you do want to know how to contact me, should I just leave my DM in case okay. You can find me on Instagram, just at Jaaziyah. That's my name, Jaaziyah. Jaaziyah. But yeah, if you find me around over here and you want to talk, just pull me aside and be like, you asked for this. Okay. Thank you.
As they have this, you just clap for them. Thank you guys. You guys have done amazing. Amazing, amazing.